The agent for Freddie Freeman strongly denied a tweet from Fox Sports Radio host Doug Gottlieb that he withheld from Freddie Freeman the Braves' final contract offer. That agent is Casey Close, who's been around a long time, and said that he is considering legal action over that report. He called Doug's tweet reckless. Said there's no truth whatsoever to what Doug Gottlieb recklessly tweeted, and I would testify that under oath we are currently evaluating all legal options in this matter. What Doug tweeted yesterday, that the agent never told Freddie Freeman about the Braves' final offer. That's why Freeman fired him. He found out in Atlanta this weekend. It isn't that rare to have that happen in baseball, but it happened. And he followed that by saying Casey Close knew Freddie would have taken the Atlanta deal. Let's bring in the great baseball writer, Tom Verducci, Sports Illustrated, kind enough to join us. Tom, thanks for joining us. Let's go back to the World Series. It felt like it's a foregone conclusion that Freddie Freeman was going to leave the Braves, or certainly it was talked about a lot. What do you remember about that covering the World Series?
Yeah, I think all of us in the media kind of took it for granted that Freddie was just a Brave for life, right? The team drafted him out of high school, basically grew up there. But, I started to hear from other people. Freddie was telling people that, hey, if the Braves don't treat me right, if they kind of drag their feet on this, I wouldn't mind going back to Southern California. He's from Orange County, obviously, and that had an attraction to him. It wasn't his goal. I mean, he made it plain. He wanted to remain a Brave for life, and the Braves said they wanted to keep him. So based on what the motivations were, at least publicly, Dan, we all thought this was a marriage just waiting to happen to get it locked up. It kind of reminds me of the Albert Pujols situation, right? The Cardinals win the World Series. We all think Albert's going back to St. Louis, and St. Louis made an offer that really it was easy for him to decline based on what the market was. And Albert left.
But I wonder, do you think the Braves wanted Freddie Freeman back? Is there maybe, like the Cardinals, I think, were thrilled that Albert Pujols, right. Hey, we tried, we couldn't keep you. You went to the Angels, you got paid. They got the 10 best years. Could this be similar that the Braves said, hey, thank you, Freddie. You take that offer. You can't turn that down.
I think it might have gotten to that point, Dan. I don't think they started that way. I do believe that they wanted Freddie Freeman there. And don't forget, we had the lockout, which put everything on hold. Now, when you got a franchise player like that, it shouldn't get to the situation where it's on hold through the lockout. That should have been done before the lockout. It wasn't. But I do believe the Braves' initial plan was, yeah, we want to keep Freddie Freeman here. Must be a way to do it. But on the other side of the lockout, remember, everything now is under fast forward, right? It's not business as usual. Opening day is just 3 weeks away. You got to ramp up and figure out what your roster is, who's going where. There was a little bit, planned negotiations under a gun at that point. Again, it shouldn't have got there, but it did. So now everything is sped up. And I do think at that point, the Braves started to consider, what if we can't re-sign this guy? We've got to pivot now. And obviously Matt Olson was a great way to pivot, but I don't think that's how they started.
Yeah, probably didn't, but they probably got to the point where they said, look, they're going to offer you more money than we can offer you. And then you start to, I think that preemptive strike with getting Olson in, and then maybe Freddie Freeman says, wait a minute here, what just happened? And I don't know, why does he fire his agent? Why does he fire Casey Close?
Well, I mean, he said in a tweet, I'm not sure he acknowledged, Freddie put out a statement that he didn't say he fired him. He basically said it's on hold right now and he's working through some issues based on what he heard over the weekend in Atlanta. I'm sure he heard from Braves people, probably a different story than what his version was or what he understood it to be. And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, but he's got to sort this thing through. But yeah, I think in his heart of heart, Freddie wanted to be a Brave. And I think he was blindsided when the Braves pivoted to Matt Olson.
Yeah.
And the Braves they're a smart organization, as every team is these days, and realize we can get a guy who's younger, cheaper. We're buying the best years of Matt Olson, where let's face it, with Freddie, you're buying his decline in his 30s. From a purely analytical business point of view, it was easy for them to pivot at that point because they had a good option right there. And on a bonus, the kid's from Atlanta, Matt Olson. So that would help people get over kind of the shock, really, of losing Freddie.
But what do you think happened this weekend where, I was told that Freddie was aware of this in April, but didn't want to make a big deal out of it and then the wave of emotion when he went back to Atlanta. It's one thing to get that response, welcome home, but do you think somebody, throw out a name from the front office, pulled him aside, just say, hey, just so you know, we did want to keep you?
It could have been that. It could have been a player. It could have been a staff member. It could have been a lot of people who maybe was getting stories secondhand. But I do think being back in Atlanta, and let's face it, everybody was revisiting, why isn't Freddie in a Braves uniform? So a lot of info or semi-info was churning at that point, and I'm sure Freddie heard about it. So yeah, I think this had a lot to do with it. Like he probably heard something that he had not heard before. And let's face it, the Braves want a relationship with Freddie Freeman going forward, right? He's not going to finish his career as a Brave, but when he's done, he's still going to be thought of as, a world champion with the Braves and an MVP with the Braves, probably go in the Hall of Fame as a Brave. All those things are important, right? So that relationship doesn't need mending. And I think Freddie in his heart felt it emotional, as you said, over the weekend, very emotional. So the easy way out is blame it on the agent, right? And I don't think we really know what actually happened, what the final figures were. But I've seen this happen a lot before where you want to mend a relationship, the agent is the easy one to blame. You don't need a relationship, or at least an emotional one, going forward, where I think Freddie wants to repair it with the Braves and the Braves want to repair it with Freddie.
Do you think Casey Close goes after Doug Gottlieb and sues him?
I don't know about legal. I mean, people say that. We'll see. I mean, he, obviously, based on the words he chose, he's extremely angry. Listen, Casey's been doing this for a long time. This is not someone who just woke up and was an agent last week and was in over his head. He's got a sterling reputation in the business. He's been doing it, I think, at least 30 years. And there's never been an instance that I can remember where he went, let's call it going rogue on a player, where it's unbelievable to think about this could happen, where any agent would have an offer from a team and the team where the player wanted to play and didn't tell him about it. And again, Dan, we're not in a situation where you could slow play things. Things were moving very quickly. There wasn't time to slow play things. It's hard to believe that scenario happened. Maybe it did. We don't know. I think we need, and I think we will hear more from Casey Close, because we haven't heard, and I think it's time somebody does, and probably Casey, to really define what went down. I'm talking about revealing some of the offers, or at least the parameters of it, so that people have a better idea, and especially Freddie has a better idea of what happened.
Yeah, I wonder if there's paperwork, emails, things like that.
Oh, they keep notes, Dan. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about emails, but they definitely keep notes and figures. Every agent, every club has a written account of all the talks that go on.
How do you think this is going to, he homered last night, Freddie Freeman. Yeah. And then now he's batting over 300. The hometown crowd gets to cheer him or welcome him or whatever they do starting tonight. But how do you think this is going over with the Dodgers, the locker room itself? Because Clayton Kershaw kind of hinted at, hey, you're with us now.
I saw that. That was interesting, right? He said, I hope we're not second fiddle. I mean, you did sign a 6-year deal there. You are a Dodger. As you said, he's hitting well. I just think last weekend was just so emotional for him to be back in Atlanta. There's still not closure to what happened at Atlanta to Freddie Freeman. So I think he still has to work through that. But I think the feeling of, having an attachment to the Braves will not be as strong as it was last weekend, just because physically he was in Atlanta and hearing some things. But I did catch that quote from Clayton Kershaw. It was really pretty telling. And I think the players have to say in the Dodger clubhouse, hey, man, you're wearing a Dodger uniform now. Let's get over this.
If I gave Freddie Freeman a mulligan, what do you think he'd do?
I think he'd be wearing a Braves uni right now. And I say that because you saw the emotions over the weekend. That wasn't somebody who would turn the page and had closure. This was someone who had real strong attachments to that organization. And listen, it's pretty cool for him to be playing in LA. He's got his wife, his kids, his dad are up in the suite watching him every day. He's got apartment in Studio City, 10 minutes from the ballpark. It's not a bad place to play and live, right? You're playing for the Dodgers in LA. So I think over time he's over it. But Freddie's an emotional guy. And it wasn't just over the weekend that you saw that, Dan. So that attachment is real. And I think if he had a do-over for the right money, of course, that's always the deciding factor. I think he would be a Brave.
I didn't cry like that at my dad's funeral.
Well, I mean, I thought, a one-off. Yeah, he's in that first press conference, I thought, okay, I get it. It's really reality is hitting him, but reality kept hitting him all day long, all night long. It was weird. But that's Freddie. You got to love him for that because he doesn't try to hide anything. Everything's real with Freddie.
Before I let you go, I know Rob Manfred, the commissioner, did an interview with ESPN, talks about robot umpires by 2024 and also expansion. Is this inevitable that we're going to have the automated strike zone? And if we do have expansion, where are we going?
Well, first of all, you have to resolve Oakland and Tampa Bay, their ballpark issues before we expand. You've got options in Nashville, Montreal, Las Vegas. Those are probably the top three for me. And I think those two teams, if they don't solve their issues locally, they wind up filling two of those three spots.
Okay.
The owners do want to get to 32. We're a long way off because I think the Oakland and Tampa Bay needs to be resolved. Robo strike zone, not robo ups. Robo strike zone, I think, is definitely happening. But I'm starting to think they really like this challenge system that's in place in the minor leagues. They use it as a hybrid, Dan. I don't know if you heard about this. It's sort of like Hawkeye and tennis. And you're watching Wimbledon. It's great, right? There's a line called. The guy said, that was out. Everybody looks at it. In 3 seconds, you realize whether the ball's in or not. The crowd gets into it. The visuals of it are great. You could do the same thing, and they are doing that with baseball. So the batter gets punched down on a pitch that's a foot outside. He says, well, I want to challenge that. It pops up on the screen. You can see it's a ball. Not redo the pitch. Now it's a ball. I like that system rather than going full on robo because I'm telling you, if you want that system, it's going to cause a lot of problems. Watching a game when the count's 3-0, is the strike zone the same as when it's 0-2?
No,
of course not. Umpires, they're arbiters of the game. They move the game along. That breaking ball that's 12-6 that catches a robo strike zone and it's not a strike as we stand here today, that's going to create huge problems. So I kind of like this challenge system. I'm coming around to that where you do have the strike zone to get the biggest calls right? Maybe it's not important to get 100% right every ticky-tack call in a 7-0 game on a 3-0 count. But that call that changes the game, and you watch games, Dan, you realize that, you realize some counts actually change the outcome of the game. Get those ones right. And I'm telling you, in the minor leagues, it happens in 3 or 4 seconds. It doesn't slow the game down. I'm starting to think that's the way forward. The technology is there. And so far, the reviews have been good from the players in the minor leagues.
I know you're busy. Thank you again for joining us, Tom.
You got it, man. Anytime.
That's Tom Verducci, Sports Illustrated baseball senior writer.